So grateful to be back with Sharif Abdullah, who I have so much respect for. And I'm going to go straight into, I think, what's most important, and that is your vision of what humanity needs at this incredible time in our awakening, in our planetary situation.
Well, number one, thank you. Thanks again for having me here. And I really appreciate it. And I also appreciate your audience because I can talk about more than generalities and more than the surface level. Let's get deeper into where are we going and how are we going to get there. I've been talking about creating a world that works for all, not just as a book title, but I've been talking about that as my mission, my vision, and what all of our vision should be. And I've been getting both positive responses, but also responses that indicate that people don't really get what I'm talking about. So I think it was Marshall McLuhan who said that people early on thought that computers would just be television, but better. Now, those of us who know how to use computers know that it's a different animal, okay? And I think that when a lot of other people say creating a world that works for all, they're using that basically as a euphemism. They don't see the world working for all, or they think that all is me and my friends. And I think that what they're thinking about in terms of a new society is this society we've got right now, but better, you know, and maybe we'll get our flying cars, okay? Maybe we'll get like really super duper computers, you know, but not being able to think outside of the conditions that we've got right now, and then put a little icing on that cake. Well, I think that we need a whole other cake, because this one's pretty rancid. It's not for those who have managed to carve out for themselves a niche that they think will last for a while. What we again euphemistically call middle class. You know, I've got enough money, I got enough car, I got enough house, I got enough food, and that's okay. I think, though, that the earth herself is telling us that we've got a different way to go. We've got a different direction to go in. If we keep doing what we're doing, we're doomed. But I think that we're doing what we're doing in order to get to the next step. So what we have to do is start envisioning the next step. I was one of the fortunate, I don't use this term lightly, but blessed people to deliver my first daughter. Oh. And it was not like sitting in a sterile hospital room wearing, you know, all the white stuff and watching and having somebody else standing at the entrance and watching over his or her shoulder while my daughter popped out. I was the one with the catcher's mitt.
Oh, that's great.
Come on, give her to me. You can do it. And I have to say one other thing. There was a set of circumstances that led to us being in an ambulance. An ambulance driver says, "Oh, she's not going to be due for the next 5 or 6 hours as a first mother." So the guy with the experience gets behind the wheel and drives. The guy in the back with me had never, ever seen a baby born. And he was completely and totally freaked out to the point I was doing more care for him. Like, okay, you sit over here and you face that way because you can't handle this. Okay. So, but one of the things that struck me is that everybody was doing something, including the ambulance guy freaking out. But nobody was doing anything. What was happening was at a meta level, was at this higher level, and we were all caught up in it. If my wife could have stopped the process, she would have stopped and said, I'll do this next week. This is really tough, okay? I'm just gonna take a break now, take a few days off, go eat some good food or whatever. But you don't get that choice. It's not her game. And my daughter, safe and sound and warm and listening to her mother's heart beating and getting all the nutrients she needs from her umbilical cord. My daughter didn't want to get born, okay? But the process wasn't my daughter causing anything or my wife causing anything or me causing anything. We were all caught up in a process. I believe that we're caught in the same process right now as a society. I think our entire society is going through a birth process. And anybody who has ever been part of a birth process, whether it's your child, whether it's an animal, a dog, a cat, a lamb, or whatever, it's a messy process. It is amazingly messy, and it's a painful process. I don't know why the divine made the process painful, but it's really a unnecessary part of the process. If it wasn't, women would be born with zippers, and so all of the all of the pain, all of the yucky stuff simply goes away when that baby pops out. It's like, oh, this is what it's all about. This is why we went through this pain. This is why we went through this messy, yucky, gunky stuff. We don't appreciate that. We don't look forward to it in terms of our society, and therefore we're not leaning into the process. And that's something that women giving birth do. Even while it's hurting, etc., you lean into the process. You make this process happen, and out pops a baby. Actually, out pops two things. First thing that pops out is a baby. The second thing that pops out is the afterbirth. Now, the afterbirth is absolutely crucial. I can't even explain to you how crucial it is to the birth of a healthy child or any kind of child. And as soon as the child is born, it is absolutely worthless. It has no intrinsic value. You throw it away. In civilized societies, you bury it, many of them with a seed that grows into a tree so that the nutrients have another life. But bottom line is you don't have to do that. And in our society right now, we through our media, we're paying all of our attention to the afterbirth. We're paying no attention at all to the baby we're having. And we don't even know what the baby looks like. We don't know what the new society looks like. A lot of my progressive friends will say, oh, well, we want an anti-racism, anti-sexism, anti-colonial, anti-capitalist society. And I'll say, okay, that's fine. What's the baby look like? You just told me what it doesn't look like. And Our challenge is, can we see beyond the afterbirth into what the baby actually looks like? I believe that we can, once we let go of our intrinsic desire not to look at that, not to look at the yucky stuff, and not to look past the yucky stuff to a baby. I believe that the baby looks like the vision beyond all of our problems. We know that we've got a housing crisis that goes beyond America. The UN right now says that there's 100 million people who are homeless around the world. Now, that is our society. It's not, our society doesn't stop at the US borders. Our society pretty much stops within our atmosphere. Okay, so if we're all breathing the same air, we're all in the same society. Add to 100 million people who are homeless, add another billion people, this billion with a B, who are underhoused, who are ill-housed, whose homes will be underwater within the next 5 years. Now, this is a crisis of global proportions, and the people who purport to be our leaders are unable to see it because they don't have the eyes to see it. And because of that, we don't have the vision necessary to either change our systems and structures, change the organs in our society, or we are trying to get the leaders to act differently. The people who got into a position because they act a particular way, which is anti-social, we're trying to ask them to become social. I forget who said it, but someone said, don't try to teach a pig how to sing. The results that you get won't be what you want, and it really annoys the pig. And so every time we do a climate conference, we put in the room all of the people who created the problem. When are we going to put into the room and empower the people who actually create the vision of the next, our next society? I got a vision of what that the next society some time ago, and I've been processing this for a while. I clearly don't have all the answers, which is actually good, because people would be ignoring all of the answers right here. But I'm seeing that the thing that's created the problem is not, and I go through the litany, the list. It's not racism, it's not sexism, it's not colonialism, and it's not capitalism, okay? And if there's another ism you want to put in there, it's not that either. The problem is consciousness. I've been saying that for like 40, 50 years and still not getting traction there. Let me go a bit more, be a bit clearer about that. The problem is the consciousness of individuality and separation that has created all of our problems. Because some people think that they're separate from other people because of the color of their skin, they act differently. The problem isn't the color of your skin. The problem is your belief that there is a difference. The problem isn't the carbon in the atmosphere. That's not the problem in terms of climate change. The problem in terms of climate change is the consciousness that puts the carbon in the atmosphere. So once we get to looking at the change of consciousness, what is it that has to change? And the thing that has to change is moving from our consciousness of being an individual to our consciousness of the collective, our consciousness of the whole. Now, recently, this is my dishwashing revelation. Dishwashing is one of the least favorite things that I do. So I save it up until I have a good number of dishes to wash. And I put on a bunch of YouTube videos so I can learn something while I'm scrubbing these dishes. And I had a video on the behavior of an ant colony. And I think it was called The Insane Biology of an Ant Colony. And I'm watching this and I'm washing dishes, and I learned two things. Number one, ants are among the oldest beings on the planet. Ants came way before dinosaurs. And in roughly unchanged shape. So ants, billions of years ago, I think they predated dinosaurs by 1 billion years. So ants a few billion years ago look pretty much like an ant today. So ants and dragonflies are largely unchanged. I'm kind of imagining, God in his workshop, kind of carving out beings. And when he looks at the dragonfly, looks at the ant, he says, damn, nailed that one. The second thing I learned was that ants were not at first colony beings, that they were individual beings, and they evolved into colony beings. And when the video got to that point, I stopped washing dishes and I got a notepad and I wrote down the words colony humans with a question mark. What would happen if we became colony beings? So that my first level of identity is not as me as an individual, what I'm calling a solon. I think that term is, I know who said that first, and they'll come to me in a minute. It wasn't me. And we can turn into beings where our first level of identity is of the group, not me as an individual. And that would be becoming a holon, a being, a holistic being. Now, when we do that, all sorts of things change. You don't have an individual like an Elon Musk or a Jeff Bezos accumulating more money than any human being, any 100 human beings, any 1,000 human beings could spend in their lifetimes. And if they do have it, they would not be applying it for their ego pleasures, like Jeff Bezos making what he calls a yacht that's so big they had to tear down the bridge in somewhere in Europe where they're making the yacht. To get the yacht wouldn't fit under the bridge. They wouldn't do things like that. They would be looking at, how do we build housing for all? How do we grow food for all? How do we create systems and structures where I know where I belong? I know where my commitment is. I know where where I belong in the on the face of the earth, in the face of our society. I'm doing good for the entire society, and therefore the entire society does good for me.
Mhm.
You used the term tribe, but how about if we become the human tribe, the human colony, where the colony takes care of all, and all participate in the life of that colony, to the point that I'm willing to risk my own life. I'm willing to sacrifice my own life for the sake of the colony. I'm willing to grow my love. I'm willing to grow myself for the good of the colony, not because I feel like doing it, but because it makes the colony better and stronger. With that focus, let me tell you this last thing. With that focus, all of our challenges are right solvable at our fingertips. We need to make 100 million people housed. Okay, no problem. If we can build a spaceship and send 3 people to the moon, we can build housing for 100 million people, no problem. If it's going to, if the seas are going to rise, then we make the houses float. What's the problem? The only time we have a problem is when we're thinking as individuals. Now, how do we trigger that global consciousness, the global colony? Well, I've got some ideas around that too. And so, we can, I believe that we can catalyze that, and I'm committed to doing it. So we'll see what our next steps are.
So much that you said that was really fascinating, and I never knew that about the ants. And that is incredible. So for those of us watching, what steps do we take? Like, you laid out a beautiful big picture, the macro. What do we on the micro level do?
That is a question I get a lot, and I know what the answer is and has been. And I think I know how to catalyze that answer now. So the first thing is, don't pretend that we're a colony. Let's become a colony. Let's actually develop collective consciousness. Now, we know how to do that. We've been doing that for thousands and thousands of years, but we've been trying to collectivize our consciousness on too small a group. We have different religious groups that can collectivize their consciousness with certain chants or meditations or ceremonies, but that's for that little group. We have various meditation practices. We use various kinds of plant medicines. We do all these things, and when we do them, we're doing it for either this little tiny group here or no group at all. How many people are using plant medicines with no thought of another human being? It's like, I want to get high. Okay, I want to expand my mind, as though I own my mind. I want to do X or Y or Z. And I think that we can do those things collectively, not for myself as an individual, not for my small group, but for first, all human beings. We can get on the same wavelength. And secondly, for all living beings. One of the things that's happening right now, which, and I think people are starting to pay attention to it, is that our doorways to other beings are starting to open up. More people are talking about having these awakening experiences with their pets, with other animals. The media is kind of filled with, animals coming to us for help. The leopard that gets shot and it needs medicine on its leg, and it actually comes to human beings. They don't eat them. And it's like, hey, my legs hurt, and can you take care of it? I was watching, there was a dolphin beaching, where dolphins were beaching themselves. 75, 100 dolphins on this beach in Brazil. And watching the people who were jumping in the water and first bathing them to make sure they don't dry out. They can dry out very quickly. And then pulling them back away from the beach. And the way that they looked, I mean, these are like these strong guys, the look on their face was, this is really cool. I am so glad to be of service here. I'm so happy to be doing this. That is going to happen more and more. And that's going to happen throughout our family. And by our family, I mean our living family, not just human beings. Now, so what I want to do, what I am going to do, is put together groups of people, like, for example, in San Francisco or in Kansas City or in such and such. And the only thing they're going to be doing, they're not going to be feeding people or building housing or anything like that. The only thing they're going to do is get together and collectivize their consciousness over a few hours, over a few days, over a length of time that starts the process of turning, of becoming a collective being, a larger being. And that is actually, we have to do that beyond our culture. Now, one of my blessings has been to experience 100, 120, 140 different cultures in 45 different countries, and to get, and actually to participate in some of their deepest ceremonies from their cultural perspective. Now, what happens when you take, the Russian Orthodox training and the Sufi chanting and dancing and the Aboriginal dances and plant medicines, and mix them together and do that, knowing that I'm trying to get out of my culture. I'm trying to get out of my individualized consciousness and see this whole. Now, Einstein said that me thinking I'm separate from you is a delusion. It's a delusion of our consciousness. So this process of creating, I'm calling it awakening centers or consciousness centers, etc., is simply to cure the delusion that I am separate from you. And once we do that, we can we can open ourselves to something that no one has experienced before, but we are ready to experience it now. one more thing to say. So when we see the caterpillar eating your garden and then it stops and it attaches its butt to a twig and basically flays itself. It peels off its own skin, which I'm going to talk about the hurting part. That sounds like it hurts. Peels off their own skin, forms a chrysalis, and everything inside that chrysalis dissolves and reforms into the butterfly. Once we get to that place, we will recognize that we will have powers that simply don't exist on the earth right now. We will awaken organs that only appear when we're talking about the collective and not the individual. Scott, I know you know about the so-called transhuman movement, which is where you are looking to incorporate technology into your body to the point that you become this technological being. I happen to think that's an amazingly bad idea. Our technology has never been that smart. We have this, I think it was Gil Scott Heron that called it the God complex. Okay, we want to think of ourselves as God, and we want to make you smarter, taller, maybe lighter. We want you to be richer. Okay, and these are the things that all are attracting us as individuals. What is our goal when we think about ourselves as a colony being? What is our goal when all of us, when there are 8 billion separate consciousnesses that start to align themselves in some very, very powerful ways? Well, I think the last time that we did this on Earth, we built things like the pyramids. And we didn't build them by and get these stones up it's like, no, we just said, okay, we need 500 stones today, like, and then they're all there and shaped and cut and completely balanced, and we'll do the same thing tomorrow and recognize that it's not even hard. I think that we have been vision injured. I think that we have been future injured. We tend to think of our future as technological, and I think that we don't need a technological future. I think that we need a human-based and a living-based future that all beings can help to bring forth this future. If that's what we want, and if it's not what we want, you should say what you want, and then I'm going to say whether that's a good idea or not. So it's a whole other way of looking at things, and it's the kind of thing that we can commit our lives to. We see on our streets right now thousands and thousands and thousands of people who are disconnected from life. They're literally sitting there. I think that every single one of those people has a purpose, and that purpose cannot come out in the current society. So we have to dump the current society the way we dump a placenta. When I'm done with my placenta, I'm going this way and the placenta's sitting there. And we should say thank you to the placenta for getting us there, but we don't need this anymore. If we are a colony being, do we need Congress? Need them for what? if all of us are acting out of our hearts, what in the heck do you need a Congress for? And so that becomes something that we can start seeing all of the elements of the world once we change that focus from the solon to the holon. And I think that it's time for us to do that.
Mhm. Beautiful. And yeah, I love that concept of really moving into being colony beings and a world colony, a global colony.
Yep.
So again, just practical steps, releasing our prejudice, noticing our bias. What do you have to say about that? How to notice what our cultural bias is, how to notice what our prejudice is, and how to differentiate between discernment and unhealthy judgments of others.
Yes. I think that all of that comes into the correct focus once we change the consciousness into a different focus. My example of that, if, for example, you have people who have not interacted with each other and therefore may have opinions about the interaction of with each other. Over time, I've done lots and lots of, facilitated lots and lots of groups for them to get past that. And I put the others in the same room at the same time and facilitated conversation. Many times those conversations lead to breakthroughs, and the breakthrough it can be pretty dramatic. Whites and blacks coming together and having a different level of experience. Men and women having different levels of experiences, different cultural groups that could actually be at war with each other, but they've never talked to the other. And I've done this in lots of different places. And it's like, oh, that's what they're saying. This is what they're believing. Like, this isn't what our leaders have been telling us. But I think that so I've done that and it's been successful. And I've done it in lots and lots of different cultural situations. But I think that we're being challenged to do more now. How can we do that kind of cultural changing solely in our consciousness? Can I sit in the same room with someone who does not share my life experience? And can I, without saying a word to them, do whatever we need to do to blend the consciousness? I've been watching dance, spiritual sacred dances of different ethnic groups, and saying, what happens when you take this Sufi circle dance and take it to a Navajo reservation and have them do that? I think, first of all, they'll recognize that dance immediately. They'll recognize, it's like, oh, that's like the ones we used to do 100 years ago. What happens if, when you take, for example, something, a Christian practice, like, for example, the Quakers sitting in silence, waiting for the spirit to move them. And what happens if you take that to a community somewhere in West Africa? And what happens if you take their practice and move that to the Quakers? And all of us just get richer and richer and richer. And I don't have to focus on what we did to each other yesterday, last month, last year, last decade, last century. We can transcend that as long as I'm not focused on that. As soon as I focus on it, we stay stuck right there in that focus. Switching gears, look at the climate arguments, the arguments for why we continue to pollute in the face of what's going on. People, well, this is going to cost me money. So what? Literally, so what? How much money is it going to cost you to drop dead on this planet because you can't breathe? Okay. They should be paying, not me. So what? Whoever needs to pay it pays it, and everybody moves forward. But we can't get to the so what point as long as I'm holding on to my past, as long as I'm holding on to my righteousness, that I'm right, you're wrong, and you should pay for this. Scott, as you know, I grew up in Camden, New Jersey, worst city in America. We're number one, and grew up in the worst parts of the worst city in America. Grew up on welfare, grew up on in public housing. And I can't even call it growing up. I survived all that. When I was 16, took a police beating that put me in the hospital for 3 days, paralyzed from my neck down. And my head still doesn't quite sit right on my shoulders from that. And in the face of all of that, I had a choice. My choice was to hold on to the pain and let the pain define me. Not forgive the 4 officers who tried to beat me into a coffin. To hold on to that so tightly that it becomes my life. It consumes my life. And so your choice is to hold on to that or open your hand and literally let it go. Did they do me wrong? Yeah. Did they injure me? Yeah, to the point that my balance is off. I can't. There are lots of things that you need balance for, like dancing, and I can't do it anymore. I used to love dancing, and now you can't do it when you're bumping into everybody because you don't have any balance. Can I stay angry about that? If I choose to. And if I intend to be a leader of the new society that we're creating, I have to let that go. I choose to let that go. I choose to let go through either arrogance or ignorance, somebody slighting me. I choose not to give in to pain and give in to suffering. I choose to have this baby, not hold on to, oh, the labor hurt so much. Oh, the labor hurt so much. Oh, the labor hurt so much. It's like, no, you have to lean into it and you have to make that happen. I remember, this is years and years ago, when Anwar Sadat was the head of Egypt at the time and became the first Arab leader to actually go to Israel. And remember the picture of him walking off that plane. It was like walking off of a void. You have no idea what's going to happen, okay? But just that one act made the world a little tiny bit better. Now, a lot of other little tiny acts like that get you to the point that we're living in a different society that thinks differently from each other. So our challenge though is, can I let go? Can I grow? Can I become larger than this solo being here? Can I become fearless? Can I become the kind of leader who simply is fearless, that I'm not going to bog down in my fear? And again, I'm not talking about acting in a way that is helpless, hopeless, etc. It's recognizing that pain happens, recognizing that pain has happened in the world, but it's using that, I mean, literally using it to go forward, to build my heart muscles to the point that I can't be hurt. As you know, there's a Tibetan Buddhist concept called drala. And what drala means is, I'm above my enemy. I'm above the enemy to the point that this person can't even hurt me. They can't hurt me anymore. And I've said to people, like, yeah, they can kill me, but they can't hurt me. And so our challenge is, how do we get to the point where we are so powerful we can't be hurt? Somebody's persistent. Let's try this. So our challenge is, how do we do this in such a way that we build fearless people? We build vision-driven people, not fear and pain-driven people. I'm doing my part, but we all have to do our part, our challenge. And so, and that's why I invite your audience to be thinking the same way. Yeah.
I want to come in because we're almost out of time, and I have one last thought and question for you. It's interesting that you chose Anwar Sadat, because he was later assassinated for that very action that you described.
Yeah.
And so as we talk about becoming a colony, as we talk about this, are we willing to even give up our life to see the big picture, to the degree that we're even willing to give up our life, whether it's, you know, figurative or even literal? And it seems that the only way that that can happen is one reaches a state of oneness, where we realize, I am not just this body, I am part of something far greater than this body. I am part, you know, and that's how people make sacrifice. That's how people make sacrifice and feel good about it.
Yep.
Any thoughts about how we can embrace, attain that state of oneness to the degree that we're willing to let go of our egoic desires, our personality desires, and truly shift to colony thinking?
Yes, and in a way, I wish I had started with that instead of ending with that, because what I want to share with you is, and I'll try to do this in a few minutes. What I want to share with you is my lineage, the people I call my lineage, the people that their life and their life story fills me, gives me the strength to keep going. Gandhi is one of those people, and I remember how he said, you may take my life, but you will not get my obedience. Yeah. Go ahead and kill me. You'll have my dead body, but not my obedience. Another person in my lineage is Martin Luther King. And really, unfortunately, and it's one of the things I'm sad about, was that when King was alive, he wasn't. I was critical of him. I saw nonviolence as weakness,
Mm.
and I developed the sight to be able to see nonviolence as the ultimate power, to be able to stand, and I've done this before, stand in front of a person who's aiming a machine gun at me,
Mm.
giving me an order in a language I didn't know. I had no idea what he was saying. Yeah, I didn't know whether they were saying stand up or sit down. And to recognize this might be my time to go. But I know that I've got a time to go. So I'm going to be at peace, whether it's today. I could get in a car accident tonight. I could get assassinated 10 years from now. Whatever it is, I'm going to be at peace. And another person who has been in my lineage is Vatslav Havel, who was a dissident in a Soviet prison. And because of the Velvet Revolution, they dusted him off, put a suit on him, and he became the president of the country. So while Havel was still in the prison, pushing around the laundry carts, he ran into another prisoner. He didn't know the other guy was even in the prison. And they had 5 or 10 minutes to talk to each other before the guards would break them up. So what would you and I talk about when we're in a prison for our beliefs? You could talk about how bad the food is, how much you miss your wife, how brutal the guards are. You could focus on all the negatives. For 5 minutes, Havel and this other guy focused on the nature of the society they would create when they got out. Havel was taken out and was made the president. The other guy was taken out and made the foreign secretary. So we can build that society right now, or we can waste all of our time looking at all of the problems, looking at Donald Trump, looking at things that will produce nothing that you actually want. And then my final part of my lineage, my final hero is Nelson Mandela. And to the idea of enduring the pain, the separation, 28 years in solitary confinement, not seeing another human being except the guards that are brutalizing you, and getting out of there and smiling. Okay. There's a story that when Mandela was president, there's a restaurant he liked eating at. And so he'd go to the restaurant and everybody, oh, Mandela, Mandela. And he'd get his food and he's sitting with his security guards. There's a white guy in the restaurant. And Mandela told his security guard to go over and ask that white guy to sit at his table and eat. So he sat down at the table, and you could and you could tell the guy was really anxious and upset. And they all they ate their food. They weren't talking, and they paid for it, paid for his, and said goodbye. And his security guard said, well, what was that about? And he said, this guy, the guy that he just ate dinner with, was one of the guards at Robben Island, and one of the guards that beat him and brutalized him.
Wow.
And after this one time that he was beaten, he said he was so thirsty. He said, I need a drink of water, just a cup of water. And so the guy urinated on him. Now, you're the president of the country. You can do anything you want. He could have sent his security folks over and say, arrest that guy for something, and we'll figure it out later. And that'll be, that'll be his punishment. But if he had punished him, that punishment would have damaged Mandela's heart. And because of that, he was able to liberate his own heart. Whether the guy got it or not didn't matter. This was an exercise in his heart. So the four guys that put me in the hospital, the four police officers that put me in the hospital, I had to let them go. And once I let them go, my heart expands. I don't know what happened to their hearts, okay? But the bottom line is mine expanded and needs all the expansion it can get. And so the challenge is, can all of us do that? Can all of us do that expansion in a society that actually celebrates your pain? Can we celebrate our liberation from pain, from suffering? And I think that becomes our challenge.
Well, thank you as always for beautiful stories, powerful insights, and for painting a picture of a positive future for our world. And that's why I think, we call it the awakening world. And you describe the steps necessary for us to create that awakening world with eloquence and inspiration. Thank you so much, Sharif. And again, I will take people to your website, Commonwealth, and we'll take a look at the new book and all that you are doing. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you. And it's been my pleasure. It's been my heart opening to do this. And we'll chat some more.
We'll do it again. Absolutely.
Very cool.